Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss Yes's 1983 album 90125. This is my used vinyl copy that I bought however many years ago, and the original owner here taped their ticket to, I'm guessing when they saw them on this tour, at Hershey Park Stadium in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Yes, where they make the candy. The whole city smells like chocolate if you've ever been there. It was not too far from where I used to live, so somehow this record made its way back to my old town. Before this, the album before this, Drama, 1981, John Anderson wasn't on that record. Trevor Horn was the vocalist. The band breaks up after that album. And Chris Squire, the bass player, Alan White, drummer, Trevor Rabin on guitar comes into it, and Tony Kaye, the original keyboard player for Yes, who was on the first three Yes albums, they get together with the intention of starting a new group called Cinema, with a more pop-leaning, melodic-leaning direction than where Yes was or what Yes was about. John Anderson eventually comes back into the band and they go ahead and call it Yes. But this is a much different Yes than the Yes from the 70s. Way more streamlined, way more, if you want to call it radio or popish. If you want to be cruel, you can say sell out. I wouldn't go that route. For me, but there's no denying that the band made a conscious effort here to streamline the sound, to make it more radio, more, less experimental and jamming, like the 70s version of the band. But for me personally, although I am a huge fan of the early Yes stuff, the Yes album, Fragile, Close to the Edge, I did a video on the Yes album, Tales from Topographic Oceans, all that 70s stuff. I love all the 70s stuff. I also really, really like this record because I am a fan of melodic, very melodic music, popish type hooks and things, if you will. I'm a fan of very well produced records with lots of, I say this all the time, headphone mixes. You can put headphones on and you're hearing a lot of stuff going on, and that's kind of what you get with this record, where the band has gone when they did this album. And I can kind of understand why they would have gone in this direction. For one thing, the last so many Yes records before this weren't as popular, didn't sell as much as the earlier 70s stuff. And, every band like this, bands that are pushing boundaries, experimenting, trying different things, eventually you reach a point where the band has to decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep making longer songs, more solos, more complex music, more involved music? You're going to bring in maybe an orchestra. You're going to, they did Tales from Topographic Oceans. What now? Make a 4-record set with just one long song. I mean, there comes a point where where a band has to decide what they want to do. I mean, Rush went through this same thing too. A lot of progressive bands go through this, where they're pushing boundaries, they're pushing the limits of what they can do on their instruments, what they can do in the studio. Queen went through the same thing. And they eventually get to a point where you can't really push it any farther, or without it becoming going over the edge. Yes took it close to the edge, as close to the edge as they could, and maybe they just decided, all right, we can't really go any farther with that. And a lot of progressive rock bands from the 70s, or from any era really, they go through that, where they reach a point in their career where they have to sort of make a decision what they want to do. So Yes decides that they're going to streamline everything, make it sort of more melodic, shorter songs. But I would still say that there are still a lot of challenging and progressive and experimental elements to this album. It's just not quite in the way that they did things in the 70s. You know, I read an interview with Neil, or saw an interview on YouTube with Neil Peart, where he was talking about how by the time the late 70s and the early 80s rolled around, Rush was, the guys in the band were really starting to think, all right, here's something that we would have played in the past. We would have taken this complex section and played it for 2 minutes. Well, now we're going to distill it down and play it for 20 seconds. And we'll still have the same impact. We'll structure it in such a way that it still has the same impact, but it's more concise, it's more focused. And for me, that's kind of what's going on with this record. There's still some very challenging things here. Things in the musicianship, Chris Squire's bass playing, Trevor Rabin's guitar playing, a lot of the vocal stuff. There's a lot of like layered, complex vocal things going on here, because at this point you've got, of course, John Anderson on lead vocals, the man with limitless range, sings like a bird, you know, effortless range. Chris Squire has an amazing voice. Trevor Rabin, he sings, also has an amazing voice. So there's a lot of really strong voices here, and so there's a lot of layered, interesting things going on with the voices. There's a lot of interesting arrangement things going on. So again, the progressiveness isn't so much in the flying chops, if you will, fast solos and stuff all over the place. It's more to do with the arrangements and the production and the sounds that they're using. So the production on the record, it's produced by Trevor Horn, who sang on Drama. Now he's here as the producer, and I think the production is great on it. Again, it's a headphone album. You put it on, it's lots of stuff going on. It's very warm. You can hear everything. Maybe a tad bit dated at times. Dated for me in the keyboard sounds. The keyboards at this point are way different than what they were doing with the keyboards in the 70s, the Rick Wakeman keyboard style of the 70s. This is way more sonic sounds, textural sounds, and it really sounds to me, and I looked this up, they were using at the time what was state-of-the-art technology, but it was early sampling technology. So for instance, at the beginning of Changes, all those vocal parts right there, they apparently sampled those vocals, and then they had sampled vocals that they, Leave It, they're thinking of that song. All these sampled vocals that they then played on a keyboard, and then they sang real vocals over the top of that, and so some of the sounds on here sound like that. They sort of sound like early sampled keyboard type things. But it dates it a little bit, but I still think it's kind of cool. But the keyboards are functioning in a different way at this point for Yes than they did in the 70s. Also, the guitar Trevor Rabin is a much, much different guitar player than Steve Howe. He is more of a layered guitar player, lots of layered guitars, maybe a la Brian May type of thing, where there's all this like orchestrated like guitar layers. He has a lot of different guitar tones. So there isn't really a whole ton of like soloing in the sense. I mean, there are, but the guitars really function more in an intricate way with the harmonies, with the tones that he's using, with the textures and everything. And also Trevor Rabin is a main songwriter here at this point with the band. Alan White's a very different type of drummer, maybe a little bit more straightforward, which takes away some of the more proggish sound from the early 70s when you had like Bill Bruford, who was a very jazzy type player. Alan White is way more straightforward. Chris Squire even sort of reins it in a little bit here. I did a little research to see if I could find this out, and maybe somebody knows and can comment down below. It really sounds like Chris is using a different bass. He's known for playing the Rickenbacker bass, and it makes me wonder on this record if he was using a different type of bass, because the bass is way less bright and clanky like it was on the 70s era. Yes, it has a more of a warmer tone. And Chris Squire is one of my favorite bass players, and the stuff on Fragile and Close to the Edge is some of the greatest bass playing in hard rock ever. But I enjoy his bass sound on this. It's a bit more warmer. It's a bit more elastic and rubbery and smooth, and he picks his spots a little bit better. He's still all over adding melodies and stuff like that, but at times he's able to sort of lay back and be more simple and supportive. But he still has his moments in there. Okay, so the album starts with "Owner of a Lonely Heart." And this album and this song in particular really brought Yes into the 80s and the MTV era. This song was all over MTV. It still gets played all over the radio. It's probably the most straightforward song Yes had ever written. I almost said Rush for some reason. Yes had ever written up to this point. It's the most straightforward song, I think, on this album. And it's cool. It's got a cool riff. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's a song that maybe I've heard too many times when I was prepping for this. Honestly, I think I listened to it once, and the other couple of times I listened to the record, I just skipped over it. It's still a cool song. It's got a cool riff. The melody line is very catchy. Everybody's seen the video a million times. It sort of brought Yes into the MTV era, if you will. And then the rest of the album is a lot of the rest of the album. It's got a lot of really melodic stuff on it, like Hold On. The next song has a very big, very catchy chorus. Again, lots of vocals, very well produced with a lot of depth to the sound. It Can Happen to You. I love Chris Squire's bass in this. He's playing like this sort of this sort of like bubbly, bouncing, moving bass line. Something that Chris Squire is always great at, adding these sort of, it's like a melody in itself, like a counter to melody to everything else that's going on. And there's like a keyboard sound that sounds like a sitar, or again, there's all these different types of keyboard sounds in here, which is cool. Probably my favorite song on the record, Changes. I really love the way the verse sort of drops down. I'm pretty sure that's Trevor Rabin singing the verses, and then Chris Squire comes in the chorus. The way the verses sort of drop down in their very minor key, and then the chorus sort of explodes out, and it's got that really catchy melody line with all the vocals and everything. Great guitar playing in it. It also has that syncopated, it sounds like a marimba type of thing, like an odd meter thing, classic Yes, right? An odd meter thing. And then there's a part in the song where it breaks and the guitar plays like this wicked, like fast lick, and he descends down, and it goes back into that syncopated odd meter marimba sounding thing. So really cool. It just shows you that Trevor Rabin, if he wanted to, he clearly had the chops, but he's a guy, again, that, very much in like a producer type of way, he really picks his spots with the guitar. But that one lick from the guitar in there is just absolutely killer. So my favorite song on the record. Side 2 starts with Cinema, which is a short instrumental. Then Leave It. This is the one that I mentioned, has that sort of sampled vocals, the real vocals over the top, and all this the vocals bouncing off of each other in a sort of round type of way, overlaying and crossing over each other. I love when the chorus kicks into this. Chris Squire has this awesome bass line, this sort of moving around melodic bass line. And it has a lot of much like Changes. It has these spots in it where there's all these rhythms, like counter rhythms, different odd rhythms up against each other, like do 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 do, almost kind of like mechanical in a way, but it all sort of fits together like a rhythmic puzzle, if you will. So that's really cool. Then the last 3 songs on the record are okay. Our song, probably my least favorite song on the record. City of Love is cool. I love the chorus in it. Waiting for the Night is really big. It opens up and gets, we'll be waiting for, so cool chorus. Again, these sort of big sounding vocal harmonies. And you can hear, Chris Squire had such a strong voice. Trevor Rabin had such a strong voice. And then you throw in John Anderson in that, and it just, wow, it's a really powerful sound. And you can kind of always pick out their different voices in there. It sounds like a choir, but you can hear all the different voices. And then the album ends with Hearts, which is sort of a more sort of laid back one. But, a cool way to end the record. So kind of an album that if we were a big fan of 70s era, yes, a lot of people didn't like this record. They felt like it was too slick, it was too produced, it was too poppy, it was too like trimmed down and safe. But again, for me, I like melodic stuff, and I think that the progressiveness, the experimental nature of this is more in the textures, the tones, the arrangements, the things they do with the vocals, and them just sort of picking their spots a little bit. And everybody gets a chance to shine at various points on the record. So for me, that's where the progressive sound lies on this. And I dig it. I think it's pretty cool. It's an album that I actually enjoy coming back to rather frequently. I'm actually the late 70s Yes stuff, really after Tales from Topographic Oceans. It starts to get I lose them a little bit across some of those albums. I like Going for the One, Tomato. I do like those, but I don't really care for Drama and it's a Relayer. Like, there's good stuff on those, but they're just sort of inconsistent for me. So I like this record for its more focused nature, its more melodic and catchy nature. So, all right, there you go. Yes, 90125. I always want to say 90120 after the TV show. It's hard for me to relocate. 90125. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this record? I know I have a lot of progressive rock fans out there that watch the channel, so let me know what you guys think. The album that came after this, Big Generator, to me, it went too far into sort of the poppy thing. I don't really care for that record, but this is sort of a nice sweet spot for me with the more melodic poppy stuff with still some progressive elements. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and until we see you again, make sure you rock hard, ride free.